Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Daily Objective. And we've got a topic for you today. Now, this is a little bit on the provocative side, but hey, you know what we're about. There was an article published recently circulating about a young lady saying, I was the fastest runner in Connecticut, something along those lines. She was one of the fastest running competitive runners in the female sport. And now that evidently trans women are considered women in basically every sector of life, including sports. It's made it basically impossible for biologically born women to compete, which is why there have been men's men's leagues and women's leagues all throughout the history of sports. So what are we going to do about this? I mean, I want, it's like on one hand, we need to like take a firm stand to push back against this, but it's like being castigated as bigots, being called like, oh, you are trying to persecute the most delicate and sensitive minority right now, which is the trans community. So it's understandable that people are afraid to speak up, but at the same time, isn't it kind of absurd to see biological women needing to compete against biological men who are naturally much stronger? There's no women in the NBA for a reason. It's not because they don't want to play for the Bulls and make a ton of money. Women cannot compete against the best of male athletes. Here to help me articulate myself, as you can see, I'm having a hard time speaking English today, is a guy who, he's a boxer. He does various types of martial arts. Can't imagine he's too interested in punching out women. But if that's the position he's in, he's an athlete. He's an honorable man of his sport, and he will, I guess, have to do so. Or will he? Let's find out. Please welcome Mark Pellegrino.
Hey, man. I don't know how to respond to that. I mean, because I thoroughly enjoy women's UFC. I think it's definitely distinct from men's UFC, but certainly enjoyable. But what's so controversial about biological men not competing against biological women? Why is this a controversy now?
Because it's saying that a trans woman, meaning a biological man who transitions to become living as a woman, is not equal to other women. So basically, it's like we're casting them out. We're saying you're not really a woman. You don't get to play in women's leagues. That's why.
She isn't equal to other women. If she went through puberty as a biological male, that endows her with certain physical characteristics that women do not have. That makes her physical characteristics different from and not equal to the women she's competing with, right? Greater bone density, larger muscles, more endurance, greater lung and heart capacity. I mean, these things matter. These things really do matter. A biological, let's say people of equal skill levels, a biological male champion in the UFC at whatever, let's say, lightweight level, meets a biological female who's a champion. Now, there are certain equalizing characteristics in martial arts techniques that can offset strength and power and endurance and all that give a woman an advantage, certainly against normal men. But against somebody equally skilled, it's a blowout. It's an absolute blowout because of his physical endowments that nature gave him. I don't think this is a matter that's open for debate. Every doctor I've talked to talks about these physical characteristics and the inequalities of these physical characteristics. And not that there aren't women on the spectrum who are, endowed with strength similar to or greater than many men out there, but as a general rule, I don't think that's the case. There's a videotape of Zuby, the rap singer and sort of man about social media out there. There's a videotape of him breaking the woman's deadlifting world record without any warm up. Now, he's a guy who's in shape. No average guy could do that. But he's a typical man in very good shape, breaking the world record for women's deadlifting. So that says something about our relative and physical endowments. that needs to be taken seriously. I know that these people in the identity world want to pretend all identity is about here. It's all here. Or it's social constructs, but a lot of identity is a reflection of what is too, and we have to respect what is.
Yeah, and by the way, not only do I know who Zuby is, but I'm going to be watching him debate Yaron Brook tomorrow on the Ayn Rand Center UK at 7 p.m. UK time.
Cool. What are they going to debate? Religion?
Tradition.
Okay, cool.
Does the song play in your mind like it does for me? Tradition. Anyway, I don't think we cleared that with the record label, but you know, I mean, there's multiple aspects of this. So one way to look at this is to say properly, look, every league should be privatized and make their own decision. I mean, they are private, but okay, it's like I'm trying to unpack this in separate things. On one consideration that the leagues have when faced with trans women wanting to compete against cis women is they don't want society to see them as bigoted. So they don't want any controversy. So they don't want society. They don't want many people to say to them, oh, you're anti-trans, you're transphobic. That's one part of it. Another part of it is they don't want to face actual lawsuits and prosecution as violating the Civil Rights Act, for instance, because if it's demonstrated that they are not, that they're treating trans women or trans men as in some way that's not fair, they can definitely face a lot of legal trouble, which sort of comes from some of the elements of the civil rights laws that are antithetical to property rights and liberty. So there's multiple reasons why the leagues maybe don't want to use their own judgment on this and to keep cis women separate from trans women or cis men from trans men. That's so there's two separate aspects. There's the kind of PR element, and there's also actual legal concerns. They don't want to face civil rights lawsuits and civil rights charges against them.
Why isn't it possible to incorporate, understand transitioning human beings as a real phenomenon, something that exists, that's real, while also incorporating and understanding biological realities? Would it be racist or prejudicial or whatever language these folks use to create a trans league?
I don't think so. I think it would be, if anything, depends who you ask.
Trans men competing against trans men, trans women competing against trans women.
Yes, and maybe those they should also, those same people might also be allowed to compete in regular leagues, meaning of the league of the sex they were born as. So let's say Caitlyn Jenner wants to still compete against cis men. Maybe that's fine because they're all natural born males, but then also having a trans only league where you compete against members of your same trans group. Maybe that would also be.
I mean, there are acknowledgments for these kinds of biological realities all over the sports spectrum. I mean, I'm almost 60 years old. If I were to compete in jiu-jitsu, there's no way I'd be competing in just say whatever my belt category is, because they understand there's a clear physical difference between someone who's almost 60 and a 20-year-old man. There's just clear physical differences across every aspect, except for the rare individuals who somehow don't lose muscle mass as they get older and don't lose testosterone as they get older and maintain strength and virility at the same level that they were in their 20s or 30s. That's extremely rare. So you would compete in a seniors division because it recognizes biological realities. So, the trans world can recognize the realities of, whatever the complexities are that create our identification in gender, but also recognize certain physical realities and biological realities that are beyond question. And when it's when they question that stuff that we have to take pause and fight back because it's not rational.
It's not rational. Also, thank you, Kiana, for the $2 in the super chat. And over in the regular chat room, the sort of nosebleed chat that's not the super chat, we got Christopher saying primacy of consciousness, which I think is sort of the answer to your question. Why can't people just be adults about this? Because I don't know if you've seen the ACLU's. Yeah, ACLU. I always confuse them with UCLA. The ACLU's famous tweet with the clapping emojis. Trans women are women. Trans women are women. Trans women are women. You don't know what's coming next. Trans women are women. And then it just repeats that. But I mean, there's people with a lot of influence and philosophers of our time, intellectuals and activists, they're saying to treat trans women as in some way different from natural born cis women is a type of discrimination. You're like an unfair discrimination. You're treating them like their reality, their truth doesn't matter. That the fact that they feel like a woman is not, is not good enough for you. It doesn't, that you're not on board with that. You're not supportive of that. Now it would be wonderful if the majority of trans athletes would be fair about this, and they would say, look, yes, I live as a woman. I see myself that way. I've always felt that way. I don't know why, but that's who I am. That's how I choose to live. And please, you should not allow me or anyone in my sort of community to compete against the opposite natural sex, because it's not fair to them, or it's unfair advantage, just unfair competition to somebody in that match. It would be great to see the trans community be very mature about this, but just like perhaps with the gay community in decades past, and maybe even now, it would have been great to see the sort of most loud, outspoken gays fighting for gay rights to also be champions of capitalism through and through. But I don't think that's always been the case. So oftentimes efforts for equality have come along with wanting favors, wanting regulations. So kind of my dream would be to see various minorities, various groups of people that are facing adversity in the world to champion capitalism and rule of law as the sort of solution to what ails them. And certainly in this case, we've got a few more super chats. Sammy with 99 pounds or euros, Emily with 99 cents American, and Marilyn with $2 American. Marilyn says, people don't get their own truth. That's true. Nathan with $5 says, great show, guys. Well, great comment. Can't just say I disagree with that. Yeah, so primacy go ahead. Mm-hmm.
I do think this is a primacy of consciousness issue. I do think that, as usual, liberty, free markets, capitalism resolve most of the conflicts, in the sense that if you are an owner of a team and you choose to incorporate the values that seem to be dominant now with respect to ignoring biological realities, then you can fully embrace that if you choose, and some other free organization, private organization, can freely embrace those. I think the reason some of these communities have embraced socialistic tendencies is because socialism appeals to people who feel oppressed, and who have not just feel oppressed, but who are oppressed legally by society. And the answer for them is Marxism, that sort of sees the world in terms of these dichotomies, in terms of these unreconcilable conflicts, and that you're the only way you can win is to sort of turn the tables on the oppressor. Capitalism doesn't appeal to people on those terms, and so it misses them. And so I completely sympathize with their desire to turn the tables, and because they are legitimately legally oppressed, they legitimately are experiencing inequality before the law, and there's only seemingly one social philosophy that appeals to that kind of suffering, when in fact we know liberalism and capitalism and free markets actually could, if it were more politically active.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people that can be reached with individualism, basically telling people, like how you're feeling. Feelings are facts, as far as your feeling exists, and you should look at it and understand it. If you feel like a woman, definitely don't evade it. Don't try to suppress it. Speak to a pro and speak to people in your life, and definitely try to understand the world and understand yourself. Definitely. Nobody ought to be punished for how they feel, whether it's their sexual preference, their gender identity, or whatever else they're dealing with. And also, there's a lot of those people who are dealing with those things can be comforted and emboldened to a great degree by embracing an ethics of egoism, which connotes looking at the world independently and rationally, and pursuing rational values, and all of that, when implemented in politics, amounts to capitalism, which means, private individuals can associate and trade with whom they wish to.
By the way, I think when we're talking about the trans phenomenon, of course, we're talking about experiences that we know nothing about, and we can't really identify psychologically with that. So I'd like to make a recommendation to our Lord Emperor behind the scenes that maybe he should bring in Blair White as somebody to talk to and talk to us about this phenomenon, because I'm sure she can really shed light on it, and I'm sure she agrees with us as well about the way sports are sort of coming down on the wrong side of the issue in many respects. But she can enlighten us certainly as to the psychological phenomenon that is this. I mean, I definitely have friends who are trans, and I just listen to what their phenomenon is. But I don't think they deny biological realities as far as I know. But it's certainly becoming that way, where people want to impose their experiences on reality and claim their experience as primary over the facts of reality. And this is something we certainly have to think about.
Yeah, Blair would be a great guest. I know Blair. Also, there is an objectivist or a serious student of objectivism that has been on this channel. He was interviewed by Nikos a few months back. David was, I think, the last name I remember.
Yeah. Okay, I remember.
So maybe having her on. I don't know what name David goes by currently. Maybe it's still David, but I would love to learn more about what she is going through. But there was a lot that was discussed in that interview with Nikos, and also Andrew Bernstein and Bosch Fawston interviewed David as well around the same time. George with the super chat says there shouldn't be men's and women's sport, just sport. If women wouldn't reach top level, so be it. We'd watch them compete in lower divisions. Interesting. Okay, so maybe it shouldn't be divided by gender, but just by skill level. So you'd have a women's league, like, that's not necessarily for women, but it's just they're in that particular skill level, and then what we call the NBA would be just the part of the NBA
I think that's a worse partitioning. I mean, look, we unfortunately have this biological gender divide. It's the way we categorize athletes. Maybe it's unfortunate, but I think if you do it according to level, you really consign women to never being able to compete. Really, if it's just at level, with respect to physical sports, even I just don't think that would work. Even the great ones that I know and respect in certain fields, particularly the martial arts, would probably be quite a bit down the rankings if they were competing against men at the equal rate and equal skill level. I don't know that they'd even be in the top 10. Maybe some of them are good enough, and like I said, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is sort of the thing that changes, the game changer in every respect. If you're skilled at that, you can really balance the odds against somebody a lot bigger and stronger. But I think that's a worse categorization. I can't help but think that women wouldn't compete or be champions at all under those circumstances.
Yeah, and men, especially if it's combat, but even in any sport, a lot of men don't want to compete against women. So like psychological factors come in a way that it might not in a men versus men's or women versus women's sport. So, and there's all types of manipulation that could be going on behind the scenes that women.
Well, look, I think the good news is, like, the UFC is changing that in a lot of ways too. There's a lot of cross training, and women train with men train, with women, and these women hold their own. And if there is that elite level of athlete, female athlete that wants to compete in the men's division and really is capable of doing that, hey, once again, it's a property rights thing. Let's see what a free market would do. I think a woman who can compete against men at a top level would be a huge draw, right? She would be a huge draw. There'd be quite a bit of money to be made from somebody like that. I just don't know how frequent, that kind of event would be.
Yeah, it's hard to.
Wouldn't be commonplace.
Right. Thank you, Christopher, for the $1.49 super chat, and he sends a rainbow image. That's nice of him to say. There's a lot of like tension, I think, that we don't hear that much about. Maybe between, let's say, gay people who have they fought hard for just to live in society without being persecuted. And now they're being told, you're actually part of the problem. You who are cisgendered and actually and that's a big part of your identity. The fact that you're a man who's attracted to men, that's actually, you're part of the transphobic world now. And you need to be an ally and you need to ask, how can I do better? And then it goes further, like among trans people who sort of fought just to be recognized and accepted. Now they're being told by the non-binary community, oh no, you trans people, you binary people, like who see yourself as just man or just woman, you're actually phobic towards us non-binaries because we're the ones who are the real outcasts now. And then if as has happened at times, if a trans person says, these non-binaries are really making it all about them, they're kind of hijacking this whole movement. Now they're the ones who are non-binary phobic. It's just, I think the conflict comes. It's perfectly fine to be thinking that way if that's where you're going, but the conflict comes in when you're trying to impose that on everybody around you, and therein lies the rub. Because I think liberty and free markets and respect for other people's way of doing things is what resolves a lot of this conflict. Stop imposing your will on me. Be and do what you choose, as long as you're not hurting another person. I really have no problem with you at all. However you choose to be called, however you choose to identify, is nothing to me. I'm going to look at you because I think the essential you is your character, and I'll make determinations based on that, not based on these other things which I consider superfluous. Now they may not. That's perfectly fine. I think the problem is getting in everybody's business, getting in everybody's shit, telling everybody what to do, trying to make other people accommodate you is not what peace and civility is about. We accommodate one another by staying out of each other's way. The thing called rights is the ultimate liberal way of accommodating other people. This thing called tolerance is the ultimate liberal way of accommodating other people. Doesn't mean I have to accept you. Doesn't mean I have to identify with you or relate to you. It just means that we all get out of each other's shit, man. And let's just do that. That solves a lot of problems. Yeah, and problems, like questions do emerge. Let's say you've got a child, and even if we're able to abolish public education, so there's that part of it is not the problem. But let's say your private school where you send your child hires a trans teacher or a non-binary teacher or a teacher who lives and looks a certain way that you're just not really, you don't want your kid to be exposed to for one reason or another. Now you need to decide, am I going to speak out against this? Am I going to be vocal about my concern or not? Am I going to just...
Well, look, in a private institution, you have a right to withdraw your child from that place. You can discuss it. It's not necessarily a bad thing for the child to be exposed to someone like that and question and ask what it means, provided that what they get back isn't some form of fear mongering or a threat or indoctrination, but just, this is the way I feel about the world. This is the way I identify. This is the way I look. Take it or leave it.
I agree. You have the right to withdraw your child, but the question is posed before you. Are you going to withdraw your child? Are you going to face having people call you transphobic or something like that? It's just these questions will continue to come up.
It's like we're in this massive secondhand society where the people leveling the accusations are ultimately driving for your acceptance, your confirmation of their reality. And the people who are too fearful of speaking out are ultimately looking for the other person's acceptance and the other person's confirmation of their reality. It's like this, it's like a gross, it's like a waltz of stupid, a waltz of weakness, a waltz of second-handedness, a waltz of non-independent thinking. Let's stop the dance, man. Be what you are. That's fine with me. But don't tell me how I gotta think. I'm perfectly open to listen and be your ally. But don't fucking tell me I'm phobic because I think biology's real, and that that identity matters. Identity matters in the world, that we have things that go on in our head. We have things in the world, and we have to identify what both of those are. And and the other side, the right side, don't come down on me because I think there's a point to the trans argument. Don't come down on me because I think there's a point to this identification as gender or sexuality as coming from lots of areas, not just biology. It's certainly not just biologically determined.
Yeah, when I took an anthropology class when I was in school, I thought we would just learn about cavemen and cool stuff like that. It turns out it's all about how gender means different things in different parts of the world, and in different, developing countries, gender roles are completely different. And the whole thing just made me feel like, how could I ever explain any of this to a kid? Like, it's not politically correct to say that, but that's kind of what I took away from the class. I'm like, should I even have kids if I need to explain so much stuff to them? But anyway.
Well, you probably can't, but you know what? There's something true in the movement that we have to take from, while at the same time holding on to the concept that identity, as we understand it, A is A, matters.
Yeah, I'll plug again the interview with David Birnbaum that was on this channel, because David, with a background in objectivism, is able to approach these questions rationally. Thank you, Mary Link, for the super chat, saying, I will use whatever pronouns are requested and be as kind and understanding as I can. I don't presume to understand other people's psychology. Thank you, LMH, for the super chat. Now, True. The analytic synthetic dichotomy in the nosebleed chat room says, and a biological man is a man no matter how deranged he is. So, but what does that mean in practice then? Like, if a person who we've always respected intellectually, who's been a searching, probing person who takes his life and values seriously, discloses that he's been feeling like a woman and wants to basically transition to some degree, do we just call that person deranged and no longer?
No, I think that's where Foucault might have had a point when he talked about some psychological diagnoses being incorrect. When at one time homosexuality was deemed to be a mental illness. I think it might be in the DSM-3 or DSM at one point, one of its iterations, as being a mental illness. And later on, we discovered that's not the case. Well, there's something to be said for that. To call somebody who has a brain that may honestly be female, to call them deranged for the fact that they've always had this experience, and the transition and actual transitioning can actually help them with that experience as opposed to leave them in conflict. To call them deranged is not, it's not the story, man. It's not the story. And maybe some objectivists will jump on me for that, but I think it's a real phenomenon that needs to be taken into consideration. Blair White could tell us there are people who are trans and the transition experience helps them. It helps them. It doesn't hurt them psychologically. It actually helps them. We got to find out what's right, what's good about it, right, and what's not.
It is a contentious issue, like you said. Some people, they'll jump on you for showing any sympathy to trans people. And obviously, we know there's plenty of people that will try to eat you alive if you don't completely bow down to anything a trans person tells you. But the fact we can all agree on is that certain people exist. Certain people exist with certain psychologies, and we don't know yet exactly why they are that way, but they exist. We need to coexist, and we need to understand and learn about the human condition. All right, coming up in 90 minutes, the premiere of HBTV. Do you know what HBTV is, Mark?
Tell me.
Harry Binswanger television.
Oh, that's right.
Now that I would like to see. And guess what the topic is? You'll never guess this. It's evolution, fact in biology, fiction in psychology. Speaking of contentious issues, I'm looking forward.
What's evolutionary psychology?
Oh, got an hour. You know, all this, they try to say, basically what I think it amounts to is saying that determinism is at play with whatever the culture is. So culture is biological. And so if society looks a certain way, that's evolution who made us that way. So they don't understand free will. They don't understand reason. There's a lot they don't understand. But is there something to evolutionary psychology? Maybe. I'm obviously neither an evolutionary biologist nor any type of psychologist. Let's hear Harry Binswanger's perspective on this. He's certainly a bona fide objectivist, and his dissertation, his PhD, I believe, was on biology, and he's definitely a voice worth hearing, and he'll be heard right here on the Ayn Rand Center UK. This is big, folks. I mean, as far as objectivism on the internet goes, the Ayn Rand Center UK has been breaking new grounds. Lord Emperor Razi behind the scenes. It just, nothing's ever good enough for him. He's never satisfied. He's always bringing us new good stuff. So please consider becoming an Ayn Rand Center UK member to not only get exclusive content and study groups, but also to know you're playing a part in growing this magnificent project. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Thank you, Mark. This has been, a difficult discussion, but a necessary one. I'll see you on Clubhouse. See you all there in just a moment. We'll see you there. And stay tuned for Harry Binswanger TV in 90 minutes from now, as well as the Daily Objective, same time tomorrow. Thank you and goodbye.